Hey everyone, it's Juliana, and welcome back to my channel. Tonight, I want to talk about something a little different, not about design or craft, but about the architecture of a moment that can break you. I had prepared a speech that night. I was standing in a beautifully catered room overlooking the Chicago River, clutching a little note card in my hand. It was supposed to be my night. A dinner to celebrate the scholarship I had won, the one that was supposed to change my life. I remember the low hum of conversation, the scent of expensive perfume, and the proud, expectant smile I was wearing. Then, my father, Robert, walked up to the microphone. The room quieted. I straightened my shoulders, ready for my name to be called. But he didn't call my name. Instead, he announced the creation of a $200,000 trust fund for my sister Madison to expand her career as a social media influencer. And as a final, stunning act of cruelty, my mother, Catherine, unclasped the silver necklace I had spent 3 months handcrafting for her and put it around Madison's neck as the crowd erupted in applause. They didn't just steal my moment. They stole my voice, my work, my very identity, and replaced it with her. It's late here now, and thinking about it still feels heavy. And if you've ever felt completely invisible in a room full of people who were supposed to see you, just do me a favor and comment what time it is where you are right now. I just want to know I'm not the only one up thinking about these things. That night at the scholarship dinner wasn't an isolated storm. It was just the loudest thunder in a long, quiet weather pattern of favoritism that had defined my entire life. Growing up in our Chicago brownstone, there were always two distinct worlds. There was Madison's world, a vibrant, sunlit stage funded by our parents. It was a world of brand-building trips to Los Angeles, professional camera rigs for her content, and endless praise for her growing follower count. Her life was a performance, and to my parents, it was a legitimate, exciting career path. Then there was my world. It was the quiet space of my bedroom, smelling faintly of metal polish and wax. It was filled with sketchbooks of intricate designs, calloused fingertips from hours of shaping silver, and the deep, personal joy of creating something beautiful from nothing. To my parents, this world wasn't a career. It was a cute hobby. I remember when I was 19, I asked for a professional-grade polishing wheel for my birthday. It cost about $300. My dad said it was too steep for something I just did for fun. That same month, they paid for Madison's $2,000 trip to a social media convention in Miami. The message was clear. My substance was worthless, but her surface was a worthy investment. It's a dynamic I think a lot of people recognize in their own lives, whether in family, school, or work. So, I'm curious. Let me know in the comments. Type 1 if you were the quiet creator, the one working on things in the background, or type 2 if you always knew someone who effortlessly commanded the spotlight. There's no judgment, just a little poll to see who's listening. So while my parents were busy pouring their resources into Madison's curated reality, my own reality was one of quiet, persistent work that nobody seemed to notice. But that's not entirely true. There was one person who saw through the noise, who looked past the glittering facade of my sister's online life and saw the real substance being forged in my little workshop. That was my great-uncle, Theodore Sterling. Uncle Theodore was my grandmother's brother, a self-made man who had built a manufacturing empire from the ground up. He was old school, a man of few words who valued integrity and hard work above all else. During his rare visits to Chicago, he would sit in the living room, observing the family dynamic with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I remember one Christmas, I tried to show my father a new pendant I had designed, a complex piece that had taken me over 100 hours. My dad glanced at it, mumbled, "That's nice, honey," and immediately turned his attention to a new video Madison was showing him on her phone. I saw the disappointment flicker across Uncle Theodore's face from across the room. He didn't say a word then, but a week later, a thick cream-colored envelope arrived for me. Inside was a cashier's check for $5,000 and a short, handwritten note on his personal letterhead. It said, "Talent doesn't ask for permission to shine, Juliana, but sometimes it needs a little fuel. Go build something real, T.S." That note was everything. It wasn't just money, it was validation. It was the first time anyone in my family had ever called my passion real. That $5,000 from Uncle Theodore wasn't just startup capital. It was a shield. It was permission to finally build a world for myself, away from the shadows of my family's judgment. I didn't tell them about the money. I didn't tell them anything. Instead, I rented a small, dusty studio in Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood and got to work. I called my online shop Luna Crafted. No last name, no connection to my family. It was anonymous. It was mine. For the first year, I poured every spare moment and every dollar from my day job into it. Long nights were spent hunched over my workbench, fueled by cheap coffee and a burning desire to prove my great-uncle right. The first sale felt like a miracle. A stranger in Portland, Oregon, had found my work and thought it was worth her money. Then came the turning point. A respected fashion blogger with a cult following discovered one of my silver crescent necklaces. She posted a photo, and my little shop exploded overnight. Orders flooded in. My secret venture was becoming a real, profitable business, and the entire time, my family was blissfully unaware. They were too busy celebrating Madison hitting 200,000 followers to notice. The irony reached its peak when Madison herself bought a pair of my earrings and featured them in one of her favorite new finds videos, completely oblivious that her own sister had made them. That feeling of building something in the dark, something that is purely yours, is one of the most powerful things in the world. If you've ever had a secret project or a private dream that you poured your heart into when no one was watching, I want you to share just one word in the comments that describes that feeling. For me, that word was sovereignty. But while my world was quietly, authentically expanding, Madison's was about to spectacularly implode. The thing about a life built on image is that it's incredibly fragile. Her downfall didn't come slowly. It arrived like a wrecking ball in the form of a viral video from an investigative YouTube channel famous for exposing online fraud. The video was titled, "The Fake Influence of Madison Maxwell," and it was brutal, meticulous, and undeniable. It laid out everything with cold, hard evidence. Screenshots from bot farms where she had purchased tens of thousands of followers, leaked emails from small businesses she had scammed by faking brand deals, and even flight records proving her spontaneous trip to Bali was actually just a well-shot weekend at a botanical conservatory right here in Chicago. The backlash was immediate and merciless. The hashtag #MadisonEyesOverParty trended on Twitters for 2 days. The brands that had legitimately partnered with her publicly severed ties, the ones she had faked partnerships with, threatened to sue for damages. Her perfectly curated empire, the one my parents had proudly invested their savings and my college fund into, crumbled into digital dust in less than 48 hours. I watched it happen from a distance, seeing the panic in my parents' frantic group texts. The brand they had worshipped was now a massive financial and legal liability. The life they had chosen to celebrate, the one built on shortcuts and illusions, had finally revealed itself to be completely hollow. And in their desperation, I knew with a sinking feeling in my stomach exactly where they would turn next. It took exactly 2 days. 2 days after Madison's empire of illusions went up in flames, my phone buzzed. It was my mother, Catherine, her voice tight and stripped of its usual forced cheerfulness. "We're having a family meeting," she said, the words clipped. "Tonight, you need to be here." It wasn't a request. I walked into my childhood home, and the air was thick with a toxic mix of shame and entitlement. Robert, my father, was pacing the living room like a caged animal. Madison was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking like a ghost of her former glamorous self. No makeup, her eyes red and swollen. Catherine stood in the center of it all, trying to project an aura of control that she clearly didn't have. They didn't ease into it. My father launched directly into a tirade about the financial catastrophe, the angry calls from brands, the looming threat of lawsuits, the money they had lost. It was all about the damage to the family name. Then my mother turned to me, her expression hardening. "Juliana," she began, "we have always been a family that supports one another. We invested everything we had to give Madison a chance at a real career. And now, you are the one in a position to fix this." I waited for the please. It never came. Instead, she said the one word that made my blood run cold. "It is your duty as a sister and a daughter to help this family get back on its feet." Duty. Not a choice. Not a favor. An obligation. In that moment, listening to their audacious demands, I felt a strange sense of calm. The part of me that once craved their approval had finally gone silent. They didn't see me, not really. They just saw a lifeboat. I let the word duty hang in the air between us, heavy and sour. I looked from my father's desperate face to my mother's demanding one, and finally to my sister, who couldn't even meet my eyes. The silence stretched. Then I laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh, just a short, sharp burst of air that cut through the tension like a razor. "Duty," I repeated, my voice even. "Let's talk about duty." I stood up and walked over to the fireplace mantel, picking up a framed photo of Madison from her latest influencer event. "You talk about your investment in Madison's career as if it were a noble sacrifice. You invested in an illusion. You funded a performance." I turned to my sister. "Madison, you remember those crescent moon earrings you featured in a video a few months ago? The ones you said were from some amazing indie artisan you discovered?" She looked up, confused. "I made them," I said quietly, "in my hobby workshop. While you were all celebrating fake milestones, my little hobby was fulfilling orders from across the country." I pulled out my phone. It took me 3 taps to pull up the dashboard for Luna Crafted. I didn't say a word. I just turned the screen around and showed them. The sales charts, the revenue streams, the 6-figure profit from the last fiscal year. "This," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "is the worthless hobby you refused to support." The color drained from my father's face. My mother simply stared, her mouth slightly agape. That moment, when the truth finally comes out after years of being hidden, it's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I want you to think about a time you had to reveal a difficult truth, whether to family, a friend, or just to yourself. If you've been there, just type the word "done" in the comments below. It'll be our quiet signal of shared courage. For a few seconds after I showed them my phone, the only sound in the room was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. You could see the shock on my father's face curdle into something else. Calculation. He opened his mouth, and I know he was about to start spinning a new narrative, some story about how they had secretly supported my artistic journey all along. He never got the chance. His phone rang, shrill and intrusive. It was Uncle Theodore's lawyer. The tone of the conversation was short, and my father's face went white. My great-uncle had passed away peacefully in his sleep that afternoon. The grief hit me like a physical blow. He was my only one. My family's reaction was different. There were performative tears from my mother and a somber, weighty silence from my father that felt more like financial assessment than mourning. The will reading was held a week later in a sterile, high-rise law office in downtown Chicago. We all sat around a polished mahogany table, my family on one side, me on the other. They were already talking in hushed tones about the sterling fortune. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. He listed the assets, a vast investment portfolio, properties in Chicago and New York, and the most shocking asset of all, the controlling stake in Sterling Industries, the manufacturing company my own grandfather had founded and lost decades ago, which Theodore had secretly bought back. Then, the final clause. All of the aforementioned assets, properties, and controlling shares, the lawyer read, his voice unwavering, are bequeathed in their entirety to his beloved great-niece, Juliana. My father shot to his feet. That's impossible, he roared. But I just sat there, clutching the arms of my chair as the weight of my uncle's final, monumental act of faith settled over me. He hadn't just given me money. He had given me a legacy. The lawyer's words were still hanging in the air when we stepped out into the sterile marble hallway of the law firm. The thin veneer of my family's grief didn't just crack, it shattered. My father cornered me before I could even reach the elevator. His face was a mask of pure fury. "You manipulated him," he hissed, his voice low and venomous. "You preyed on a lonely, senile old man and poisoned him against his own family." I just stared at him, speechless at the audacity. It was my mother, however, who delivered the truly chilling threat. Her tears were gone, replaced by eyes as cold and hard as steel. "We will fight this in court, Juliana," she said, her voice dangerously even. "But more than that, we will take this public. We will tell every news outlet and every blogger in this city the story of a greedy niece who took advantage of a vulnerable elder. We will frame you as a monster." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your little jewelry business, your precious Luna Crafted. It won't survive the scandal. Your customers will abandon you. Every good thing you've built will be tainted. We will burn it all to the ground." I felt a jolt of fear, a primal instinct to protect what I had created. But then, looking at their faces, I saw they weren't just threatening my business. They were threatening my soul, banking on the idea that I would crumble to protect my passion. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to corner you like that, threatening to tear down everything you've built? And it's a terrifying place to be. You're faced with a choice. You either fight or you fold. Down in the comments, I want you to write which choice you think I made. Just the word fight or the word fold. I'm really curious to see what you guys think. I saw so many of your comments, and an overwhelming number of you said fight. And you were right. But I didn't have to fight the way they expected me to. My great-uncle Theodore was a brilliant strategist. He knew my family's nature, their greed, their pride, their capacity for cruelty, and he had prepared for it. He ensured I would never have to fight this battle alone. He had already won the war for me, years before it ever began. I looked my mother dead in the eye, her face still contorted with that ugly, threatening sneer, and I said very quietly, "You can't." She scoffed. "Watch me." "No," I repeated, shaking my head slowly. "You don't understand. You literally can't." I then explained the final provision of my uncle's will, the part the lawyer had explained to me in private. Uncle Theodore, ever the master chess player, had included what lawyers call a poison pill provision. It stated, in clear, ironclad legal language, that if any member of my immediate family, Robert, Catherine, or Madison, filed any legal challenge contesting the will, they would not only forfeit any potential claim to the estate, but it would trigger a secondary clause. That clause would immediately and irrevocably divert 80% of the entire sterling fortune, including the controlling shares of the company, into a charitable trust benefiting the Art Institute of Chicago. They wouldn't just get nothing. Their actions would ensure the sterling legacy was given away forever. They were checkmated. Their greed was the very cage that trapped them. Theodore hadn't just left me an inheritance. He had left me impenetrable armor. He had left me peace. After that final confrontation, my family disappeared from my life. The silence they left behind was different this time. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of my lonely birthday dinner. It was a clean, expansive quiet, humming with possibility. For a while, I considered just managing the investments and living a quiet life. But that felt like a betrayal of my uncle's faith in me. The inheritance wasn't a finish line. It was a starting block. He had left me Sterling Industries, an old-school manufacturing company. The idea of me, a jewelry artisan, running a factory seemed absurd at first. But then I realized he hadn't left me a burden. He had left me a canvas. I took the helm. I spent months learning every facet of the business, from the factory floor to the balance sheets. And then I began to change it. I sold off the outdated machinery and invested heavily in state-of-the-art tools, precision 3D printers, laser cutters, and high-end casting equipment. I repurposed an entire wing of the old Chicago factory, transforming it from a place of grease and industrial noise into a bright, modern incubator for artisans. Sterling Industries stopped making generic metal parts and started producing high-quality components for independent designers. I turned the symbol of my family's old-world, rigid ambition into a haven for creativity. More importantly, I used the company's profits to establish the Sterling Grant for emerging artisans. It wasn't just a check. It was mentorship, free access to the workshop, and a platform to sell their creations. It was everything I had never had. I wasn't just building a company, I was building a community and a ladder for others to climb. The other day, I was standing in the main workshop of the Sterling Grant building, watching a young painter named Maya, one of our first scholarship recipients. The late afternoon sun was pouring through the massive industrial windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air, and she was just lost in her work, a fierce, beautiful concentration on her face. And in that moment, I felt a sense of peace that was so profound, it almost brought me to my knees. It wasn't the money or the company or even the success of Luna Crafted that gave me that feeling. It was this. It was seeing the cycle break. It was knowing that because of the path I had walked, her path would be a little bit easier, a little bit brighter. My story isn't about revenge, and it's not really about an inheritance. It's about inheriting yourself. It's about realizing that you don't have to spend your life auditioning for a role in a family that never saw your worth. Your value is not determined by the applause of people who refuse to watch your performance. You have the right to walk away from tables where love is served with conditions. You have the power to build your own home, your own community, your own legacy from the ground up, using the very stones they threw at you. You are not defined by what they failed to give you. You are defined by what you chose to become in spite of it. If this story resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of building your own table instead of waiting for a seat at someone else's, then hit that subscribe button. Let's build this community of creators and survivors together, one story at a time. Thank you for listening.